A long, long time ago, in Russia, there was a little girl called Mara, and she was a lovely little girl, and she lived with her daddy. Her mum had died a long, long time ago. In fact, Mara didn't even remember her. And she and her daddy were extremely happy. He was a woodcutter, and he'd work really hard. And when he came home in the evenings, Mara would have freshly baked bread ready for him. And they'd sit in the orchard behind their house, and they'd eat fresh bread, thick, thick, thick butter, and honey. And they'd sit under the apple trees, and they'd talk about their days, and they would eat, and they would thoroughly enjoy. But Mara was always very, very careful to give a few crumbs to the blackbird that lived in the apple tree. Well, so life went on. But Mara's daddy began to wonder if maybe Mara did need a mummy after all. And there was a widow he often took wood to, and he liked her very much. They always stopped and chatted, and one day he brought her home to meet Mara to see if she liked her. And the lady and Mara got on very well indeed. And so her daddy said, "I'm going to marry the widow lady, and she'll be your new mummy. Would you like that?" Mara wasn't quite sure, but she said yes because she wanted her daddy to be happy. And the wedding came and went. But when the new mummy came home, she wasn't like so many stepmummies that we know who are nice and warm and cuddly and loving. She was the nasty kind. She sort of changed, and she started making Mara do lots and lots of unpleasant jobs. And she just sat and drank hot chocolate and told Mara what to do. Mara was so sad, but she worked hard because she wanted her new stepmama to like her. Well, one day the stepmother said to Mara, "I want you to go to my sister and borrow a needle and thread because I want to mend your father's shirt." And Mara said, "No need for that, stepmother. We have plenty of needles and thread. I'll show you where." "You'll do as I say," said the stepmother. "You will go to my sister or else." Well, Mara, as I say, wanted to please her stepmother, so she agreed. She put on her coat and her hat because it was a chilly day. And the stepmother gave her a little basket and said, "In that is a cake for my sister and some dry bread for you because you'll probably complain if you don't eat anything. Make sure the cake arrives in good condition. No nibbling at the edges." "Of course, stepmother," said Mara. And she went out into the orchard because she knew there might just be an apple left. That would ease the dried bread a little. And she set off down the path towards the forest. And as she walked, her friend the blackbird flew alongside her and said, "You seem very sad, Mara. What is the matter?" And Mara said, "I've got to take this cake to my stepmother's sister and borrow a needle and thread, and I'm so worried. There's something wrong about it. We have plenty of needle and thread at home." And the blackbird said, "You're quite right. There is a lot wrong with this. I know who the stepmother's sister is. It's Baba Yaga." "I can't go there," said Mara. "She's an evil witch." "Don't worry," said the blackbird. "I will look after you. I can't go with you all the way, but I'll help you as much as I can. Now, we will come to the crossroads with the big fallen tree, and there I must leave you. But don't worry. As you walk along the path, and I'll tell you the way, you'll see all sorts of strange things alongside the path, and every time you see something a little unusual, you must pick it up because it will be useful. And don't worry. Just keep being kind and good as I know you can be, and you will find that everything will be all right." So Mara shared her dried bread and her apple with the blackbird, and the blackbird said, "I'll wait here by the fallen tree. Now go down that lane that way, and just as Ava said, you must pick everything up that looks even the slightest bit useful." Mara thanked the bird and went along the path. And she hadn't gone far, and she found a bunch of bright scarlet ribbons. And Mara had lovely dark hair, and she thought, oh, I'd love scarlet ribbons to tie up my hair. They will be useful. And she popped them in her pocket. And she went a little further on, and she saw an oil can. And she thought, that's a bit odd. But the blackbird said I must pick up everything that I see that is unexpected. And she put that in her other pocket. And she walked on, and it was a lovely day. And then she saw by the path a big, juicy, meaty bone. And she thought, that is unusual. Dare I pick that up? But it didn't have flies on it or anything, and it looked quite clean, and she thought, well, I was told to pick up everything unusual. And so she wrapped it well in leaves and popped it in the bottom of the basket, well under the cake. And she went on her way. And as she walked along, she saw a little lace handkerchief. It was really pretty. Oh, she said, I've never had a lace handkerchief. I'd love that. And she picked it up and put it in her pocket. And then a little further on, she saw a whole freshly caught fish. It wasn't smelly, and they were a long way from the river, and she thought, that's a very strange thing to find, but the blackbird said I had to pick up everything. So again, she wrapped it in lots of fern leaves, so it's nice and clean, and she popped that next to the bone, and she carried the cake separately so it didn't start smelling. And she went on until she came to a grove of trees. But the wind caught up, and the trees started to blow this way and that, and the branches started to catch in her hair. And Mara said, wait a minute, trees. You'll tangle in my hair, you'll hurt me, and you'll hurt your pretty twigs. And so she put down the cake in the basket, and she pulled the lovely red hair ribbons out from her pocket, and she tied up the branches. And the branches said, oh, we do look pretty. We've never had red ribbons before. Go through, Mara, go through. We won't scratch at you any more. Mara picked up her things, and she came to the big iron gate that led the way to Baba Yaga's house. But as she lifted the latch, she couldn't push the gate because it was stiff, and it squeaked horribly. Never mind, said Mara. She put down her things and picked the oil can out of her pocket and oiled the gate very carefully, top and bottom, and the latch, until it moved silently and easily. There, she said, I'll leave the oil can with you, gate, and then you can be oiled again when you need it. Thank you, said the gate, and it opened silently for Mara. Taking her things, she walked across Baba Yaga's garden. It was mostly vegetables and herbs. It was a beautiful garden, but suddenly, from behind a tree, came a great, big, brown dog, and it had slathery lips, and it went woof, 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 and Mara went, oh dear, dog, I'm not here to hurt your mistress. Oh, I've got something you might like. And at the bottom of the basket she pulled out the meaty bone, and she unwrapped the leaves, let the dog smell the bone, and then she lifted it and threw it as far as she could across the garden. Woo! Woof, 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 said the dog, running after it like a puppy. Well, Mara went up to the house. Now, as you probably know, Baba Yaga's house was a very strange house. It had chicken legs, and so it could stand and it could walk. It made moving house much easier than having to pack things and get a van like we have to do. Now, as it happened, the house was on the legs that were folded up, and the house seemed to be asleep, for the big square windows either side of the nose had blinds down, so it looked like this. Well, thought Mara, there's nothing for it. I must go and knock. And maybe, as I'm her niece, Baba Yaga won't be horrid. And she knocked on the door. The door was opened by a girl about Mara's own age, and she got bruises on her face, and she was crying and shaking. And Mara said, "Does Baba Yaga live here?" And she said, "Yes. But if you know what's good for you, you'll turn round and go back. Baba Yaga's horrible. She hit me this morning." Said Mara, "Nobody should hit anybody. That's dreadful." "Here," she said, and she pulled the lace handkerchief out of her pocket and gave it to the girl and said, "Wipe your eyes on this and keep the handkerchief because I don't need it. I've got others at home." "Oh," said the girl, wiping her eyes, "that's wonderful. Nobody's ever given me a present before, not ever. Come in. If you've got to see Baba Yaga, you must, but I'll do everything I can to help you." And then Mara went into the kitchen. Now Baba Yaga was sitting by the fire, and she was a traditional witch. She was old and she was ugly and very, very smelly, and she got big warts and big fanged teeth, and her hair was a mess. And she looked up and said, "You smell tasty. Now what do you want, little girl?" And Mara curtsied very politely and said, "Please, Baba Yaga, I am your niece. Your sister is my stepmother, and she sent you this cake." "Oh, smells quite good. My sister's quite good at making cakes. Okay, so what do you want?" And Mara curtsied again and said, "Please, Baba Yaga, I've been asked to get a needle and thread to mend my father's shirt." "Ah, needle and thread, eh? Well, I'll get it, but in a bit. You smell as if you need a bath. You had a long journey, I expect." She clapped her hands and said, "Girl!" And the servant appeared. "Yes, mistress." "Fetch water and put it in the big pot and heat it. This girl needs a bath." The servant went pale, but she said, "Yes, mistress." And then Baba Yaga turned to Mara and said, "But you're not going to sit around while we're heating the bath. You must go into the other room and do some spinning while you wait." And Mara said, "That's very kind of you, Aunt, but my stepmother, said I must hurry straight back and not to wait for anything." "Well, when you're in my house, you do what I say," said Baba Yaga. "You're going to have a bath and you're going to do some spinning. Now get on with it." Well, Mara was too scared to argue, so she curtsied again and went into the other room where there was a spinning wheel and lots of wool, and also a thin grey cat asleep on the wool. Baba Yaga slammed the door and locked it. "Oh dear," thought Mara, "now I'm in a pickle." "You are indeed," said the cat, getting up and walking over. "What do you want? You come to spin, I suppose, and disturb me from my sleep." "Well, yes, that's what Baba Yaga said Mara. "But I've got something in my basket you might like." And she unwrapped the fern leaves from the fish and put it on the floor and said, "I only just found this. It's quite fresh. Would you like it?" And the cat went, "Oh, meow. No one's ever given me a whole fish before, not a fresh one. Oh, thank you. Now listen, Baba Yaga doesn't want you to have a bath. The pot is her big boiling cauldron. She's going to boil you for her supper. So you must escape as quickly as possible. Now you start spinning, and then when I think Baba Yaga is safely doing something else, I will tell you and you can escape." Meanwhile, the cat started to eat his fish. Mara started to spin. When the cat had finished his meal, he sat on the window ledge and said, "Look, come and look at this." And Mara went to the window, and Baba Yaga was out in her garden picking herbs to make her Mara stew very tasty. But also, there was the servant girl. She was supposed to be fetching water from the well to fill the cauldron. But instead of using a bucket, she was using a sieve. So she'd fill the water into the sieve, and she'd scarcely take 2 steps and it'd all be gone. So Baba Yaga thought she was working, but she was doing what she'd promised and helping Mara by giving her time. "Quick," said the cat, "I will take over the spinning because Baba Yaga will expect to hear the thump, 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 thump of the spinning wheel." So the cat took Mara's place. "How shall I escape?" said Mara. Well, said the cat, thump, 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 thump on the spinning wheel, when Baba Yaga turns and comes back in, you must open the window, jump out and run. Yes, said the girl, I will. And at that moment, Baba Yaga turned and went back into the house, and the cat kept going thump, 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 thump with the spinning wheel. Open the window, said the cat. So Mara did. She grabbed her basket and ran. And as she ran, the dog came bounding over to her, but instead of growling and hissing, it licked her hand and said, quick, quick, go to the gate. And when she went to the gate wasn't locked. It swung open just for Mara to slip through. And as she ran through the trees said, quick, quick, we will hold up our branches, for you've given us the most beautiful ribbons. Run, run as fast as you can, for Baba Yaga will come after you. Now, as you probably know, Baba Yaga, being a Russian witch, didn't fly on a broomstick. She flew in a pestle and mortar. Now, a pestle and mortar is used for grinding herbs and spices. It's a sort of big bowl, that's the mortar, and the pestle is a sort of big stone stick that you grind the garlic or the herbs with. And what Baba Yaga did, by magic, she made the pestle really big so she could sit in it, and then she used she made the mortar really big, and then she used the pestle to move it along like an oar through the air. So Mara knew she had to run very, very fast, and run she did. Now Baba Yaga had spotted that the servant girl was getting water in a sieve, and then she spotted that the cat was using the spinning wheel, and she said, you two, why are you doing it? Why have you not got the cauldron full, and why have you taken over the spinning, cat? And the girl said, she gave me a handkerchief, you've never given me anything. And the cat said, she gave me a whole fish and it was delicious. And then Baba Yaga said to the dog, why didn't you bite her? And the dog said, she was kind to me, she gave me a bone and played with me. And she said to the gate, why didn't you squeak to warn me she was escaping? And the gate said, she oiled me, I open beautifully now. And then Baba Yaga said to the trees, why didn't you catch your branches in her hair? And they said she tied our branches up with beautiful scarlet ribbons. Don't I look lovely? Baba Yaga said, I'll get you all later. And she went to get her pestle and mortar, and she thundered through the woods, and she thundered after Mara. But Mara happened to find in her pocket one spare ribbon and a comb. And she thought, well, if magic is happening, perhaps I can make these magic too. And so as she ran and she heard Baba Yaga getting closer, she threw down a ribbon and thought, turn into a river. And the ribbon did. Now, as you know, witches cannot cross flowing water. And so Baba Yaga, seeing this flowing river, had to take her pestle and mortar a long, long, long way round. But soon she was catching after Mara again. And she went thump, thump, thump with her pestle and mortar, and Mara was getting out of breath. And the blackbird caught up with her, because now she was in very close to home. And the blackbird said, quick, throw down your comb and wish that into a forest, a thicker forest than the one we're running through. And so Mara did. And the comb grew up into tight pine trees that were so close you couldn't squeeze between them if you tried. Curses, said Baba Yaga, trying to get through the trees. But of course Mara was on the other side of the trees, and she could see her cottage, and she ran all the way down. And as she came into the cottage, there was her stepmother and her father sitting down at dinner. And stepmother got up. She looked angry and then pale, and she said, where have you been, Mara? I told you not to go off because dinner was almost ready. But Mara flung down the basket and pointed at her stepmother and told her father everything that had happened. Well, her father trusted Mara more than his new wife. And he said, get out of my house. And so the stepmother said, I will. I'm going to join Baba Yaga. She said I could live with her. And she ran up the hill. And as she did, the trees parted just enough for the stepmother to slip between them. But she couldn't get out because they were made of Mara's magic. And so Mara and Baba Yaga are still squeezing between the trees and going this way and that and never finding each other and never getting out from that day to this. But Mara and her father decided they were quite happy living as they were. And so that evening, after they'd burned all the wicked stepmother's stuff on a bonfire, they both sat in the orchard eating homemade bread and honey and thick butter. And of course Mara didn't forget to give a large piece of a nice crumbly crust to the blackbird.